Your mind is limitless. The possibilities are endless. Awaken Your Mind Magic shows you how you can dream limitlessly and live your life on a new level. Susan Kathleen speaks with ordinary people who are living extraordinary lives using the power of their mind.
Gold on the inside, silver on the outside. Gold on the inside, silver on the outside.
Abundance, prosperity, and success. There are no limits to what you can dream. Join Susan Kathleen on a journey into your dreams, making a difference and living life on your own terms. This is Awaken Your Mind Magic.
Hello and welcome everyone. My guest speaker today is Kaye Doran from Perth, Australia. An entrepreneur, facilitator, incredibly beautiful, soul and spirit inside and out. Kaye is a woman's leadership and life coach and shamanic healer. She helps women who wish to create change in all areas of their life, who feel stuck, time poor, and overwhelmed to get back into the driver's seat of their lives. Her global vision is to empower women with self-worth and the ability to create change through supporting women to feel and know their inner power, and maintains that being on podcasts allows the conversations that support women to do this. I totally agree there. So with 30 years of experience, Kaye's purpose is to support women to feel and know their inner power. Welcome, Kaye. It's so fantastic to have you with us here on Awaken Your Mind Magic. And I'm looking forward to discovering more about you and your story.
Thank you, Susan. And it's so wonderful to be here. And yes, I absolutely love conversations like this. And sometimes it's just, for those that are listening, sometimes it's just that support in what they already know. Sometimes it's a remembering because they've gotten off track, and insights or maybe even something new. But anything that just keeps us awakening, empowering ourselves and moving forwards is always a great conversation.
It certainly is, Kaye. And what I'm interested to know is, now you're here, and I've read many of your stories and how you've helped so many people. I've looked at so many and read so many testimonials. You certainly are a very popular shaman and coach. What awakened you? What awakened your mind magic? Tell us your story.
That's always a really interesting question for me because it's probably like it's in stages, really. I mean, all my life since I was a child, I've heard an internal voice guiding me all my life. And when I was really young, I didn't know what it was, but I sort of knew what it was, if that makes sense. And, a lot of people will say that they've had that when they were young and then it sort of the dial gets turned down. It was never really turned off for me. It was always there. And I also, as a child, used to go to bed going, I know I have to be here, but please just let me come home tonight. Wherever home was. Again, it was just sort of a knowing. So I've always had that. But there was an event where I had a car accident and I was in a lot of pain with a major whiplash injury. In fact, the police said it's incredible that I was actually alive because the whole front of the car and a tree was literally right up in my face. And so I was well and truly looked after there. But, yeah, a major whiplash injury that never got resolved. No one was able to alleviate me of the pain. And my mother, bless her, said, you're stressed, obviously, because you're in pain. I was in pain all the time. So why don't you try meditation? So I went to the Raj Meditation Centre because it was free. And it was brilliant. I learned to meditate with my eyes open, which is a very powerful process. But I was meditating one day in my house, just focusing further off into the room on a point on the carpet. And the most incredible bright light, about the size of a pinhead, emerged in the room on that spot. And I was sort of blinking, thinking something's wrong with my eyes. And all of a sudden that light shot across the room, hit me in the chest. I felt myself sort of go backwards with the force of it. And then just this massive, overwhelming feeling of love. And love doesn't even seem like the right word. And I just knew in that moment I'd met my God, because I never used to be able to say the word God. It would be great spirit. It would be, you know, everything else but God. But I knew in that moment I'd met my God, and that I was sort of changed from there, and then was inspired to pack up later on down the track my firstborn daughter with my husband at the time, and to travel around Australia. And by the time we'd spent all our money to get everything together, we literally had $50, but thought, you know what, we'll go anyway. You know, my husband had family in Tasmania, which is where he was from, and it's like, well, they've not met the baby yet, so worst case scenario, we then credit card it back. But we didn't. We ended up travelling around for 9 months. And when I was I'd had a reading, because I'd always been intrigued, in Coffs Harbour, and I just walked out and went, that was rubbish. That was just rubbish. But when I was in Cairns, we were walking along the street, and I just suddenly turned and started going up these stairs. And my husband at the time's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I have no idea. I'm going up the stairs. Came into this beautiful little bookstore with a few crystals and things, but mainly books. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And then this woman walked out of the back room, saying goodbye, obviously, to a client. She just looked at me and our eyes locked, and she goes, you're here to see me. And I'm like, okay, I believe I am here to see you. Who are you? What do you do? And she did a reading for me, and it was the most profound reading. She started off with the I Ching coins and progressed. I suspect she didn't need any tools, but she described my journey so far in so much detail, into some challenges I'd had with a brother back in Melbourne. When we were travelling around, it was supposed to be the best time of the year. It was unheard of floods. So there were a couple of nights we stayed in either a hotel room. She described the room, the paint colour, everything. So I sort of relaxed into it. And she did this reading, and it's like, oh, my gosh, you're going to have so many people coming to you. And I'm thinking, yeah, what for? You know, it doesn't make sense. She said, you'll write a book, you'll be on the phone, people will be calling you all the time, you'll be speaking. And right at the end, she said to me, you have this most incredible ear, Kaye, and you don't really listen properly. And I'm like, okay. So anyway, we finished up with the reading. I'm a bit baffled about all these people that are going to see me and, you know, writing a book, and it's like, it didn't make sense at the time, and I bought a couple of books to read. And then we were walking along the pathway, and I was telling my husband about the read, and I told him about the ear thing, the ear comment. And all of a sudden that internal voice that I've heard all my life said, don't you understand, Kaye? I've been guiding you your whole life. Wow. And I remember just stopping and, you know, chills, like even saying it now, chills all over me.
Yeah.
And it was like something just clicked. So, you know, we came back to Perth, and I just wanted to meditate and to join a group and to learn more and, you know, find out more. And I found my way to this gentleman who said that he was a channeler, but he certainly wasn't channeling anything of the highest. And because the answers to people in the group didn't make sense, and this internal voice would be telling me the answers to all the questions. And after a while, you know, and I'm fighting it back, and the throat's getting tighter and tighter. And I was just told, speak. So I started just very respectfully saying, well, this is what I'm getting. And everyone would get chills and go, oh, my God, that makes so much sense. And then this gentleman got us involved with a Ouija board. Now, he had 2 young children in the house that were getting severely disturbed because there was some pretty dark stuff coming in. Mm. And I watched him lose control, like he had no idea he was getting us involved in something that he had no expertise in. And suddenly he just lost the plot and looked at me and said, "You take over." Momentarily, what the hell kind of, and then again, I was just told what to do, pulled everything together, cleared all the energies, got everything settled and closed it all down. And I went, this is not on. I just want to meditate. And people wanted to follow me. Well, can we come to yours and meditate? And then I was having lunch with friends one day. I don't normally tell people this part, but, 2 hours disappeared. And then I sort of came back sitting outside and said, "What's happened?" And my husband at the time and the friend said, "Well, someone was speaking through you, but it sure as heck wasn't you." And that's where the trance channeling started. Groups grew. People came. I was on the phone all the time because I was being booked to give talks and to do some channeling and stuff. And I was a trance channeler, which means that it was a little bit like me leaving my own body. And I would sit elsewhere and have a conversation, and another energy would come in and through me, and my body would change at times, and voice and it was not me. So I'd be having a conversation while a conversation was being had and messages were coming through. Then I realized, because I lost a lot of my life because I'm not really remembering, because I'm not really present, if that makes sense. Of course, then people were booking readings. I'd have group 2 nights a week. I'd be booked for events and things. And I started to feel a lot of physical pain. And I started to get the message clearly that everything that was being said through me, everyone nods their heads. Everyone's yes, yes, yes. It's all within you. Go within, the sources within, everything you could ever, this all go within, and owning our truth, etc. And I suddenly realized I'm not meant to be channeling. I'm not meant to be in trance. I'm meant to own and integrate these energies because they're actually already a part of me. And I went to seek someone because of the pain, and he looked at me and he said, "You're doing something you're not meant to be doing anymore." And I went, okay. Then I came back, and there was sort of a sadness because that was who I had become. Do you know what I mean? The trance channeler.
Yeah.
And I meditated, and they basically said, "Don't be sad. You're just going to integrate it. You're going to integrate the wisdom. These are all the messages. This is why we used you. This is why we came through, to guide you and others back into self-mastery and owning your wisdom." Because a lot of people were back in that day walking around going, "Look, my guide is telling me to tell you." And what I witnessed was, that's a great way to go. If you don't like it, it wasn't me. And keeping everything external and separate instead of the integration of all that there is within us. So any guide, any energy you perceive outside of yourself, as we integrate it, whether you see it as an angel, so it's beautiful and it's loving and it's wise, then that's what we integrate: the beautiful, the loving, the wisdom. If it's a Native American you perceive around you, it's that earth connection and that earth wisdom. And so we integrate it so it becomes one with us. But the interesting part about that was, a lot of people, when I announced it at the next group, and I said, "I'm so excited. I've been given the insight of the next phase of us evolving as spiritual beings," and that I repeated all the lessons that had been spoken through me and said, we all sit here nodding, going, yes, yes, yes. But has anyone really gone, yes, like take it in? What is it? What are we really being asked? What are we really being told here? And I had some people in the room when I told them that I was no longer going to be in trance and that I was going to own the wisdom and the messages and integrate. And I had people get really angry with me and tell me that I was selfish, that I was denying that access, and all I saw was ego. They actually didn't care about the truth. They loved the ego state of sitting there with what they perceived as this incredible, powerful being. So that was an interesting journey, and then it sort of led me into the healing side, because I'd been doing healings while in trance, apparently, and that very shamanic style. I remember sitting there and I was doing my own healing journey through all of this and young babies coming into the world, etc. And I felt like I was personally spiraling downwards into an emotional pit that belonged to my past. And I started to recognize this is not healing. I'm actually worse off. And the more that I look at my past and revisit, the more of a victim I felt of it and the more emotional turmoil I felt. So I went, you know what, God, there must be an easier way to heal. And then that's when I started getting shown about sound tools, the shamanic drum, the rattles, tincture bells, singing bowls, my voice. And I sort of went into it kicking and screaming a little bit because I felt this massive responsibility then with working with people in that way. But anyone that's taken the shamanic path knows that you're already chosen. You don't choose it. And there's always that fight until you just integrate and surrender. So that's when the healing side, that shamanic side, started as well. And I also experienced, while I was wanting to learn in the spiritual community, I found a lot of adversity. People that I was seeking out to teach me were bullying me. They were really threatened by me. And I was just like, I'm just trying to discover what's going on for me. I want to learn. I want to grow. And bless them, they did get me to grow and learn, because in the end, I didn't feel safe out in that spiritual community because I felt disappointed, thinking, well, hold on, all these spiritual people are actually bullying me. They're not being nice to me. Where's the heart? Where's the inclusiveness? But it taught me to continually keep going deeper, listen to that internal voice that I'd had all of my life, listen to the divine, and be guided and taught by the Grandmaster, Kim herself. Source.
Kaye, this is fascinating because you've brought up something that I've noticed often happens when you are a truly gifted shaman and you find your awakening. You have that light bulb moment where you do, like you say, surrender into what you were born to be, or in fact, what you've been in past lives and what you've brought with you epigenetically through your bloodline. And when you do go to try and find out or seek a development into being the best shaman you possibly can be, you do find certain personalities that can bully you or criticize you. Why do you think they do that?
Oh, look, sometimes the jealousy, a feeling of threat, it brings up within others, and not projecting, so not taking ownership. But it's a two-way street. I needed people to be like that with me again because it made me strong in my search inside of myself. And then as you start to shift that within yourself, then you no longer need that learning of that externally. But, I think people find it very, very threatening. So again, whatever their insecurities are about themselves, jealousies, you can't just sort of put it in one nutshell of what it is, because each individual is coming from their own different perspective. And I think people feel threatened. And sometimes I think also a little bit frightened. I don't look the part. And I'm very grounded in my approach. I'm like, you know what? I've got 1 foot in the spiritual and 1 foot in the physical. And the physical is here to serve the spiritual, and the spiritual is here to serve the physical. And a lot of what I found in that sort of new age community also was an escape, that it became so ungrounded because it was a little bit like another drug. It was an escape mechanism. Rather than bringing all of that wisdom into the here, into our physical, to be very present and grounded in it, if that makes sense.
It totally does. And as a shaman myself, I understand where people can feel threatened, especially when you are true to yourself and pure to what it is that's coming through you and your wiseness. Who are your guides?
Who are my guides?
Yes.
God. So I was talking about, when we have guidance, and it's about the integration of it. So then it becomes something that's actually within you, not some external. And again, whatever gifts, insights they bring, it's about integrating and taking ownership. Now, that doesn't mean that I deny that there are spiritual entities out there, but if I only plug in directly to source, then I know that which comes to me is absolutely of the highest, because there's a lot of trickery out there in all these different realms that, a lot of people aren't really aware of. I've watched a lot of people get involved with things and they really don't know what they're dealing with, like this gentleman with what he was channeling. He was not channeling something of the highest. And that's how easy we can be tricked. So, and again, the messages coming through when I was in trance were go directly to the source. Why would you not go directly to the source? And then I know then if I feel a presence with me, it is of the source.
When you speak of the source and you talk about God, is that God outside your body and the God, goddess within yourself? So it's an energetic sensation, or we are all energy. Is it a metaphysical experience?
Oh, wow. Power question. Metaphysical experience. It's an all-encompassing experience, because I experience God within me, and then I experience the projection of God externally in this physical realm. But it's definitely, when I say I go directly to source, it's within me, because the whole universe is within me. God is the I am that everyone talks about. I am that I am. It's yeah. But I also, when I look around at the world and I give thanks, for where I live and the lake and the trees and the birds and everything, that's all me also giving thanks for God, for the divine creator that's created all of this. And it's interesting. My eldest daughter, when she was in primary school, so she was young, she was maybe 7, and she actually was going to a Baptist school at the time because she was getting a bit bullied in the normal primary school that had just opened up. We'd had conversations about, being open to all aspects and things, and they did prayer, and it was very, very small because it was a brand new school, so I felt it was suitable for her. Until the teacher asked a question, and she said, have you ever, and I'd never had this discussion with her at all, this just came from her. She said to the teacher, have you ever wondered if we're just God's dream? And she got
That's a fantastic question for a little one.
Yeah. Have you ever wondered if maybe we're not real, we're just God's dream? And she got told off for it. So I pulled her out of that school after a discussion with the teacher, actually. But, I just thought that was such a profound thing to say.
Extremely profound and very wise. She's obviously her mother's daughter, without a doubt.
Definitely. So anything that is external is actually, it's all going on in here, inside.
Which sound instruments do you use in your ceremonies?
I work with shamanic drums, and I've made all my own. Because it's like you're giving birth to part of yourself, and they all have a different energy. I also work with the rattles. So they all the sound tools will take the consciousness deeper and realign energy, but they also all have their own gifts. So the drum regulates the heartbeat, helps me understand and clear what's going on in the subconscious, gets the body's energy back in sync with that of the earth, so back into natural rhythm. The rattle refines the work. So the drum's sort of breaking up energy that's become stagnant. The rattle refines that and sort of gets into the next layers, connects us energetically to the cosmos. So it's like having a balance between heaven and earth. Then I also use the Tibetan tincture bells, which are like little symbols, and they open up all the cells. So I usually say to my clients, imagine it like thousands of eyes opening up. And if you want to heal right down to that cellular level. And I also work with the Tibetan singing bowl. So hand beaten out of the 7 major metals that relate into the 7 major energy centers and planetary system. That's why I don't use the ones that are machine made. I use the ones that are handmade. And depending on how I play that bowl in direction will determine whether it puts a healing energy in or draws an energy out. And it also clears and aligns meridian lines, etc. And I also use my voice as required, so I can sing energy to you, through you, and out from you. And I've got also a beautiful crystal singing bowl as well. And sometimes I use the bell and dorge, which is a beautiful bell. And so all those sound tools. And I also then work with the energy that flows through me, working with people, soul retrieval, clearing, whatever it is that needs to be done. So I'm always working with those tools, but what I'm working with energetically is different each time. Yeah.
Does that depend on who's in the, I was going to ask you, do you have groups or do you work with individuals? And when there's a group, how do you feel intuitively what instrument and what level of voice do you use? I'm curious.
Well, with the instruments, generally it's one-on-one healing. But, I have run groups and drumming groups and things like that where I use them. But the sequence that I've predominantly been shown, and then there's that sort of that free flow as well, where you just let go and you trust. But predominantly the order of the drum, the rattles, the tincture bells, because each is serving a layer and taking us on a particular journey. And with the voice, again, I have just a knowing. It's the only way to put it. I just know. I'll feel it in my throat. I'll feel what's happening collectively with the group or with an individual. And I just breathe into it and let it come out, whatever it is. And sometimes it'll sound like a song. Sometimes it sounds like grief. Sometimes, I worked with a client the other day and there was just so much grief there and it came out like it was blocked. And then the sound cleared and cleared and cleared. So it's very free-flowing, if that makes sense. I just connect with the individual. I have a knowing. I know what's going on with them. The same thing if I work in a group. I take great responsibility to be tracking every individual that I'm working with. And, although I don't work with the sound tools and things when I'm doing my coaching, I'm still very much tracking every individual to make sure that every individual is taken collectively through the change or on the journey, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I went to something the other night and I watched the facilitator get immersed in his own journey and unaware then of the newer people there. And I just thought, that's not how I work. I'm there to be of service to everybody, to hold the energy, to make sure everyone's included, to make sure everyone's doing the integration, make sure everyone's doing the journey, that no one's stuck at a particular place or phase or what needs to be unlocked. And group work is wonderful because as you're unlocking one person, there's also a ripple effect and that will affect the others as well. So if that answers the question.
It does, because it's fascinating because, obviously what I coach in transformational coaching and also in healing is the interconnection of energy. And of course you use energy sound healing and the natural intuitive sense to be able to help people with this natural healing that you have the capacity to be able to do through your God source. Now, I'm going to revert back to what you were saying earlier on, and that is when you were trance channeling and you felt that you didn't have control. Why was that?
There was a certain control because I had to be willing to open myself to that and to sort of, in a sense, remove myself. But it's more that I would not remember. So I would remember snippets, but not really remember, because I would be remembering the experience I was having on the plane of existence where I was. I wouldn't be remembering everything that had taken place through this energy communicating through me. And then the coming back into the body. So it's leaving and coming back and leaving and coming back. And we're not meant to be doing that. We're meant to be actually going deeper and deeper into ourselves and into our body. So it's a weird thing. It's like a double-edged sword. There's a control, but there's also no control. Because once I'm removed, I've already given permission for somebody else, for lack of, better way of describing it, to actually step in to my home, into my body, and use my voice and use my body and to communicate. Yeah.
What is your advice to people who want to live the shamanic lifestyle and feel they have the calling, but they have no idea the power of what we've just been speaking about? What's your advice to them when they first start out?
Find a really good mentor. Find someone who knows the terrain. I had a woman call out and help the other week, and she came for a session because she's very naturally gifted, and she's been trying to sort of learn on her own, and also via book recordings and etc. But just because someone can create an audiobook doesn't mean they actually know what they're dealing with. And she was playing with herself energetically and got herself into all sorts of trouble. Some really dark stuff. So the thing is, she was ready for a teacher to appear and a healer that could help her, which was me. So the thing is, find somebody who's walked that path before you. Because to me, I'm a healer, I'm also a qualified coach, but to me it's all the same thing. I just use coaching as another way to help create change and empowerment, which is healing in others. But all we are is a guide, because the individual has to do the journey for themselves, but they need to know how to get through the terrain. So, for example, when I went to Borneo to go to the top of the mountain to meet some shamans that I was thrilled to discover were women. And I did that journey, but I needed the guide who knew the way to get there, who knew the terrain. So that's all I see that myself is. I'm just a guide that knows and has been there and still doing the journey myself, and forever will be until the time comes for me to leave this particular form. So it's really important to, really find a good mentor, and make sure that when you're looking for a great coach or healing, that the healer sees another healer. The coach gets coached. Do you know that they're actually walking the talk themselves? I go and see somebody once a month to get my energies completely, make sure I'm staying aligned, and because I'm also just another human being on this journey doing my self-discovery. And there's a lot out there, particularly at the moment, that we're getting so heavily impacted by. I'll get coaching. So that's what I would also suggest that they look for, that someone that really has done the journey and still doing the journey and knows what they're talking about, so that they can guide you safely through different areas.
That's very good advice, Kaye. And also to let people know you don't mess with something you don't really know because of the darker energies.
Yeah.
What happens when somebody is sadly involved with a darker energy? Would they be able to come to you for you to heal them?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, you know, it's part of the power is also learning to understand these darker energies. You know, years ago I'd have all these other healers go, we've got to get rid of it and get it off you. And I'm like, you know what? You're just feeding it yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're seeing it as something dark, evil, you know, something to be gotten rid of. A darker energy does what it needs to do to survive, which is feed off fear, feed off anger, feed off self-doubt, you know, all these lower vibrational frequencies. So when I'm working with lifting something dark off someone, we're actually healing that darkness itself. I'm not having to get rid of something off someone. It's a mutual healing, heightening of the vibrational frequency.
Yeah, removing the bad energies and putting positive energy in. And many people have this misconception of all these evil, bad, wicked things. But basically what it is, like you say, is absolute fear. So that's intriguing that you've explained it that way, because some people or some people that I have encountered have people come back to them with the pull of fear. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, well, fear breeds fear, doesn't it? You know, and again, unless you've actually been and experienced these particular energies and different realms and all the rest of it is, you know, then you don't really understand it. And those energies can have powerful influence on us, which is why we don't want to stay in levels of fear all the time. So fear's nothing to be afraid of. We've got to learn to understand. And in many cases, you know, we can be in fear when we're growing past our comfort zone because we're about to expand. So it's like it's a signpost. But in terms of the darker energies and people in fear, again, it's because if they're not really fully understanding it, and you've got to look throughout history, there's always been this, you know, light versus dark, good versus evil. You know, it's one or the other instead of understanding. Well, even look at the yin and the yang. There's the center part where there's the, you know, the light and the dark and darkness within the light. So when we actually sort of understand the bigger picture, yes, there are energies that people just don't want to be getting involved with. Do you know what I mean? Don't go play in the mud unless you want to come out muddy. So, you know, but also
I like that.
but also not to be afraid of. You know, someone said something to me once, because they had some real dark stuff with them, put on them by a psychologist years ago, and, you know, was worried for me. And I said, oh, don't be worried for me. It can't affect me. Do you know, because I know who I am. I know the energy that I am. I know what I'm doing. You know, it does not have power over me. And I think that's the thing that we need to come to understand, that part of our growth is, well, it doesn't actually have power over me unless I allow it.
So true. And I would think in your coaching that you have the same advice. You're an accredited master life coach. What form of coaching do you offer your clients?
In February, I'll be launching the 12-week group program. And I only take 8 women in that, because I believe if the group gets too big, then not everyone is getting serviced well. Not everyone is getting the support and the attention that they need. So I prefer doing smaller groups, and that goes for 12 weeks. I also do the one-on-one program as well for those that prefer to do a one-on-one with me. And, you know, I work very differently because I'm reading and sensing people. So we have the program, but I'm able to also help people shift and see things in a way, because when I'm reading people's energy, they're basically at a subtle level telling me what they most need, if that makes sense. So I'll also say things to individuals, and I'll communicate it in a way that makes sense for them. And then I might say it a bit differently to the next person because they need to hear it in a slightly different way. So the group coaching and the coaching is everything I do, even in the healings, is really about getting people in touch with themselves and their knowing and trusting themselves and becoming self-motivated, because that's great. They could join my coaching program and feel motivated for 12 weeks. What happens when I'm no longer around?
So true.
And then the motivation dies off. You know, who's been to those workshops and you're like, yay, rocking and rolling. And then you just spiral downwards because you can't sustain that for yourself. And we're not meant to be all, you know, up over the top all the time. But, you know, I'm a women's leadership and life coach, and the leadership starts from within. That's the leadership that I invoke within people. So I like to give them the tools and the understanding of this cycle will come back around again. So you've got your tool belt ready and you can understand where you're actually at in the cycle of that change so that they can be also self-motivated. Now, that might also be self-motivated to then join another program with me or go on to the next coach, but they're self-motivated. They know, you know, they've learned something and added it to their tool belt, which keeps them in the driver's seat of their life, which is what I like to say, getting people back in the driver's seat of their life rather than the passenger, and quite often letting their inner child be the driver. I keep saying to women, would you let a child drive your car?
That's interesting, because that was going to be my next question. And I was going to ask you to tell me about the subconscious and what you refer to as the main driver. So you've started that now, and I do know this is part of your program as well. Would you explain that more?
Yes. So what happens is the subconscious is designed to always go yes. Okay, so yes, you feel inferior. Let's create circumstances to come in experiences so you can respond from that. So it's there sort of serving us, really. Now, what happens is when people go to create change in any given area of their life, and it doesn't matter what it is, the process is still the same. It requires you to grow beyond who you know yourself and how you know yourself to be now. And so the unconscious is all the false beliefs and stories that we tell ourselves, like you're not good enough, you don't know enough, you know, you're not lovable, whatever it might be, all the things that hold us back. Now, when we understand that that is actually guiding the subconscious, and that's why at times we also go to pull ourselves, you know, we sabotage ourselves as we're growing into that next level, as we're growing into that outcome that we aspire to, we get pulled back. Now, when you can actually understand that that's your unconscious guiding your subconscious, we also have the voice of knowing, power and potential. A lot of people call it intuition, but I find words have real power. Intuition for a lot of people seems like it's something a bit, you know, not quite tangible, or maybe I don't have it, but we all have that voice of knowing, power and potential. All right, so call it intuition if you want. It's okay. But that's also our superconscious mind. Now, when we hear that and we're told to transform a particular area of our life, or Susan, start a podcast, that's your voice of knowing, power and potential. And the reason I call it knowing is because there's a future Susan that's already done the podcast, already successful, speaking to Susan going, hey, it's already a given. You've just got to implement and take the action and keep going. So we, like a muscle, you need to feed that. And understanding is a powerful thing. And a lot of people go, when the fears come up, when the excuses and the insecurities come up, they're told that, here's another excuse, you need to go heal that. Well, not everything needs to be healed. Sometimes it just needs understanding. Oh, that's my non-truth. That's my non-truth story and beliefs going on here. Put it into the passenger side. I'm driving with the voice of knowing, power and potential. And you know what? It's a little bit like when you're on a road trip with someone that's annoying, but eventually it quietens down. You know?
It's when you turn the music up loud.
Yeah. So it's a little bit like, what fuel are you going to put into your subconscious?
Yeah.
You know, are you going to let the unconscious be constantly fueling it, or are you going to fuel it with your high grade, the knowing, and that you don't have to wait until you get rid of your fear, because your fear is there as your signpost going, hey girl, you're heading in the right direction, but you're going to have to change. You know,
I love that.
Yeah.
Kaye, what I love that you're actually explaining now is very simple and practical, let alone intuitive, because we were speaking about your ability to understand that God is within, and the voice that you actually resonate with is your voice, God's voice reflected. And that is as a shaman. Now you bring this into your coaching where you say, trust in the voice, trust in that inner child. That inner child is there for a reason. Let's talk about the inner child. What is it that you use in your coaching using this incredible tool?
Let's put it this way, and we have more than one inner child. I've got a damn orphanage inside of me, and that's what I'm saying. But the inner child is beautiful because it's an aspect. And once you reclaim one aspect and bring it into safety and integration, then another aspect at some time will come up. And the way the inner child can communicate is through our emotional body. So we need to understand that. And again, not get then too caught in that. It's like, okay, there's an aspect of me trying to communicate. Now, the thing is, though, the problem is in the world that a lot of people's inner child is in the driver's seat of their life. And again, would you give the car keys to a 6-year-old and go, hey, drive me to the shops?
No ways.
Yeah, metaphorically, that's what we do. We send our inner child in to go have a, deal with mum or dad or boss or, the tough conversation. Instead of recognizing, and would you speak to your inner child? Would you speak to a child the way that I see so many people speaking to their inner child? If a child came to you and said, I'm ugly, would you go, yeah, you are, aren't you? Horrible to look at. Or if a child came to you and said, I'm stupid, would you go, yeah, you are. You'll never amount to anything. And yet that's what we do to ourselves. That's what we say to our own inner child within. And whenever I've told someone that, they're horrified.
Do you think that's learned behavior from being little? Implanting from your elders?
Well, yeah, and I don't, we don't have ceremonies and integration processes. So our psyche's a little bit messed up. Do you know what I mean? And put it this way. So, when my daughter, I've got 2 daughters, and a son, and then a son from another mother. But when the girls in particular were going through, they massively want to change their hair, I'd get them to look in the mirror and honour who they are with their long hair, for example, and tell her that she's still got a place to exist within, that she's just going to change the hair, and then honour the new look that came in. Or when they went from 9 to 10, double digits, we'd do something where they honoured themselves from 0 to now, and to integrate and to let that girl know that she's still got a place to exist within her, even though she's evolving now into a 10-year-old or then the teen. And the same thing, when my daughter was pregnant, and I said to her, well, you need to do something to honour the woman that, was childless, didn't have a child, sort of single, so to speak, and give her a place to still exist within you. Whereas women are so busy celebrating, before it's even happened, the birth of the baby or the marriage or whatever it might be, without honouring and integrating these aspects into us. And then this is where you would find sometimes women that suddenly want to leave a marriage. And it looks like logically, why? Because it's actually a part of their psyche that hasn't been integrated and honoured. But we're not taught these things anymore. Do you know what I mean? We don't sit down and have women's business anymore, do we?
Yeah, not often. I mean, I think with COVID-19, more and more people are realizing that a woman's circle or a the shamanic circle is very healing and very important. And we've learned this because we've had to communicate via internet. So that's a fascinating change and shift that I've seen this year. However, the Western world do not have these celebrations. Yes, we have a birthday party, but we don't realize that those birthdays are a transition into the next part of that person's life.
Yeah.
It's very important, Kaye, that you brought this up, because I think the listeners really would resonate with this because you've put it so simply as well. Talk to me about your childhood.
My childhood? I was raised in a gorgeous family. I'm one of 5, but I did have 2 parents that were emotionally unavailable to me. So again, it was, and communication was hard. And I'm an emotionally based, empathic person. So they probably found that hard with me, and then they didn't know how to respond to me at times. But again, everything's designed for a purpose. So I was constantly being guided to come back and have to listen to myself, trust myself. And, we all are born with certain agreements in place and certain experiences that we've asked to have. And everything, although it seems like a negative at the time, part of the healing process is understanding the gift in it, the purpose for it, the love that's within it. I've always felt on the outer. I felt different. I couldn't really find my tribe. I did a little bit in primary school, but then, never felt like I had my place of belonging. For goodness sake, when I was on our friend's farm, I would sing to the cow because I felt the cow within me, big eyes, and I would make up this song. That's obviously the shamanic sort of element in me of using voice. But I love sharing that story because I've had one of my coaches, when I shared that, she goes, "Oh, mine was a chicken, Kaye. I had chickens, and I'd get the chicken and push it around in the pram and sing to it." And I'm like, okay, we're family,
you and I should be related too. I used to sing to the cats.
Beautiful. This is the powerful thing here, story, and coming back to Women's Circle and stuff, asking the questions. I was at a drum making workshop making another drum a couple of weeks ago, and there was this gorgeous 30-year-old woman asking me and the other women in my age bracket questions and about the journey. And I was telling a bit about my journey, and, she just said, "I don't know how to put this the right way." And I thought, I know what she's going to do, bless her. And she said, "It's so wonderful listening to more mature women." She put it beautifully.
Oh, she at least didn't say older.
But what I said to her is, I said, but the power for me is, she's the age of my daughters. And I said, the power for me is not enough young people want to ask us our stories and our experiences because they're too busy thinking they know it all,
Absolutely.
And this is where we find the wisdom by asking those, that have started before.
The wise woman of the tribe.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and all those things, and I've worked with so many people, and I used to work with men equally as much as women, but I have a real passion for, for bringing up the power of that feminine within us and that internal leadership, and then we can help heal the masculine as well, because we've confused the poor old men along the way, the masculine energy, and but it's always designed to guide us back into ourselves in one way or another. Do you know what I mean? And I look at my childhood and I recognize there was also always a theme there for me, jealousy and bullying.
Yeah.
Jealousy and bullying, and it followed me throughout my life until I learned to understand it. And then if I recognize it's happening again now, I'm not a victim to it,
It's interesting. I think many people like you and I, and a lot of people I know in this field of the shamanic journey, as healers, or even as coaches, we often have a very similar story about being bullied from young. And I abhor bullying. I don't think it's kind or good. However, it is, because very often these bullies are dealing with the very unusual people that they can't comprehend, when we are not mainstream people. We are different.
And, it's so powerful, because in my 40s, I felt a calling to make my business, just sort of part-time on the side, and I entered the workforce because I thought it's now or never. And I needed to grow and experience. And I had 10 years before I came back to my business full-time now, of bullying by team members, by upper management, horrific stuff. And this is where, again, I like to work with the women that want to create some change in a given area of their life, because I actually also got stuck in that safety zone, which I can tell you, they call it the comfort zone. You stay there for too long, it's really uncomfortable. And I betrayed myself to a certain degree, where I allowed myself to stay somewhere I knew was not good for me. I was earning well and things like that. But, we pay the price for it.
Certainly.
By
do.
betraying our core values. And I feel the passion now of working with women, and also in that coaching capacity, which is another form of healing, as you well know, Susan, is because I've been there, and I understand. I hear these women, I feel these women, I see these women, I know these women, and it may not be bullying or anything in the workforce, but, just that betrayal of staying in the comfort zone instead of moving beyond. And the freedom comes in the moving beyond. It doesn't come by staying uncomfortable.
100% right. And I trust that every listener who's heard what Kaye has to say here realizes that your creativity and what you are gifted with is a reason for you to actually embrace it and use it. I've actually personally dealt with so many people who've been through the corporate and are sick, have anxiety, depression, suicidal, because they're in this environment because they feel they've got to stay there to be able to pay the mortgage or anything else. When they break free, just like you did, I did too.
Yeah.
You still have time and money freedom. You have a wealth that's not just ka-ching, the money, honey. It's a wealth of this incredible total femininity and being a wise woman, whether you're 20 or 120. It's so important, Kaye.
Yeah. And figuring out and really knowing what you want. So I'm working with a gorgeous woman, actually my age, so mid-50s, and she really, really wanted to make a change in the work that she was doing and in the environment and the toxicity of it all. And it's beautiful because, sometimes women think, oh, I've got to do a big leap. But you know what? Stepping stones are fine too. 1 foot forward is still 1 foot further along than where you were. So what she's done is she got very clear on how much money she needed, how many days a week she wanted to work and all the rest of it. So she can also then move towards being of service to others on that time off, because she's an amazing healer herself who's just coming back to really trusting herself. She's stopped the kicking and screaming element. And now she's in this role and it's serving her better than before, but she's realized, hold on, don't really love what I'm doing here, so now I'm going to up the ante again. So she's still keeping her income, but she's doing the stepping stones to getting more and more refined on what's really going to be of service to her, to also give her the space to integrate then her healing business. It doesn't have to be a sever the cord and jump without a parachute, which is what a lot of people feel like it can be. Find your stepping stones, towards it. But people need to understand also that process, you know, like that. I call it the double elastic band. So when you're aspiring to create a change in a given area of your life, you've got an elastic band around you that keeps you to your current comfort zone, your familiar zone. But as you aspire to something else, you have another elastic band that pulls you towards that. But as you imagine, as you move towards that, the old one's going to get really tight. So again, understanding that that's where it's going to feel really uncomfortable for you. That's when the unconscious will come out to play, the excuses that, you know, to pull you back, and that you need to be, you're going to be uncomfortable for a certain time, but lean in, put that in the passenger seat, you know, like that annoying traveller, and lean in to that power and potential and the vision of where you're going, knowing that eventually that elastic band will snap, you know. And so many people find that freeing when they realise they can have that annoying voice, but when they have it in perspective as to, it's, oh my God, this is exciting. This is where I'm at in my growth and in my change. I mean, any woman that's given birth knows it's not a bloody comfortable thing to do, is it? But we do it because the end result is worth it.
Yeah, that's a really good description and great advice. So what I want to say to everybody who's listening, this is the lady I highly recommend you should go and see. And she's just mentioned she's in her mid-50s, and she certainly doesn't look it. And this is another incredible trait of people who've been true to themselves. They become timeless because they're living their truth. And she certainly is. She's really gorgeous, lovely, beautiful Kaye. Kaye, what would you offer the listeners with this interview? Because I've seen that you got something special that they might like to be able to contact you for. I've got some free stuff I love to give to people. So if you're a meditator and you like meditating, I've got 3 guided meditations on there in all different times, because I know sometimes we've only got 15 minutes or so. I've also turned my Power Up Your Life workshop, which explores your limiting beliefs, your subconscious stories, the patterns and behaviours, so that you can clear it to actually achieve your goals and the things you aspire to, and how to rewire the language that you're using and thought patterns. And that's the Power Up Your Life workshop. So you just go onto my website, you fill in the form. I'm not going to spam you. It downloads 3 videos to take you through the workshop and a workbook. But I also do monthly meditation and insight nights, because meditation is really the foundation for all change. You know, it does more than just relax us and give us energy. It really is the ability to turn our vision inwards, you know, to start being the commander of our mind rather than being pirated, and a really strong foundation for wiring up and adding volume to your voice of knowing, power and potential, and so much more. So, and I do that at a really reasonable price because I know the value of it. Now, I've run the first one and the women want to continue. So what I'm doing now is you can do the first 4, and you have to start with the 4 because I teach you things about getting to know your own energy and different elements like that. And then if they want to continue, they can then go into the other night and the group that wants to go ongoing. Yeah. Well, that's great. We're going to leave that on the information that's going to be uploaded with your wonderful interview. And I'd like to thank you so much, Kaye, for taking time for being with me and the listeners today on Awaken Your Mind Magic. You're a powerhouse and you're so full of fascinating information. Thank you so much, Kaye, for being with us today on Awaken Your Mind Magic.
Bless. Thank you, Susan, so much. It's been a joy.
Thank you, darling. Blessed be. That's Awaken Your Mind Magic for another week. If anything you've heard today has really impacted you and you want to know more, or you would just like to connect with me, then visit my website, awakenyourmindmagic.com, and reach out for a free one-on-one discovery session with me.
Silver on the outside, silver on the outside, gold on the inside. Silver on the outside, gold on the inside. Silver on the outside.
Tune in next week, where I'll be discussing more tools to unlock your dreams and live a limitless life that you would truly love to live. I'm Susan Kathleen, and this has been Awaken Your Mind Magic.